You'll be shocked to hear that iceberg wasn't the reason behind the Titanic's downfall. April 10th, 1912. The RMS Titanic left Southampton, England, on its first trip to New York City. At the time, it was the biggest moving thing humans had ever built. It was nearly 900 feet long and packed with luxury. Fancy dining rooms, electric elevators, a swimming pool, and even a gym. Pretty much huge, right? For rich passengers, it felt less like a ship and more like a floating palace. The Titanic also had something people thought made it almost impossible to sink. Inside the ship were 16 watertight compartments separated by steel doors. If one section flooded, the doors could shut automatically and trap the water. That design was so impressive that a lot of people started calling the Titanic basically unsinkable. As the Titanic crossed the North Atlantic, other ships sent wireless warnings. They reported dangerous ice fields and huge icebergs right in Titanic's route. The messages got through, but the Titanic kept going at almost full speed, about 22 knots. Why? Because slowing down meant showing up late. Captain Edward Smith was very experienced, and a lot of people believed the ship could handle anything it ran into. Unfortunately, nature had other ideas. The night of April 14th was especially risky. The sea was unbelievably calm. Usually waves crash against icebergs and create white foam that sailors can spot from far away. But that night, there were barely any waves at all. The water looked like black glass, and there was no moon. The iceberg blended into the darkness almost perfectly. To make matters worse, the lookout crew didn't even have binoculars. They had everything but binoculars, so the crew had to rely on their eyes alone. Imagine world's largest ship relies on eyes in dark. At 11:40 p.m., one lookout suddenly saw a giant iceberg straight ahead. He rang the warning bell 3 times and shouted to the bridge, "Iceberg, right ahead!" The officers immediately ordered the ship to turn and reversed the engines, but physics wasn't on their side. A ship as huge as the Titanic couldn't change direction that fast. Just 37 seconds later, the iceberg scraped along the ship's right side. A lot of passengers barely even felt the collision, but below the waterline, the damage was serious. Instead of punching one giant hole, the iceberg bent the steel plates and popped thousands of rivets loose. That opened several narrow gaps along the hull. Water rushed into not 1, not 2, but 6 watertight compartments. And here's the problem. The Titanic was only designed to survive if up to 4 compartments flooded. 6 was too many. As the front of the ship filled with water, it started tipping downward. Then something the engineers hadn't expected happened. The water spilled over the tops of the compartments, kind of like pouring water from one cup into another. The walls between the compartments didn't go high enough. One by one, more sections flooded. At that point, the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, realized the truth. The Titanic was going to sink. The crew quickly started loading lifeboats, but then another shocking mistake became obvious. The Titanic only carried 20 lifeboats. That was enough for about 1,178 people, but there were more than 2,200 people on board, so why so few? Because safety rules back then were outdated. They were based on old ship regulations that hadn't caught up with modern ship sizes. A lot of people thought lifeboats were just supposed to shuttle passengers to nearby rescue ships, not hold everyone at once. And even worse, many of the first lifeboats left only half full because passengers didn't believe the ship was really sinking. Some people even refused to leave the warm, brightly lit ship for a tiny boat floating in the freezing dark. As it became impossible to hide what was happening, panic spread. The ship's band famously kept playing music to help calm passengers down. Crew members sent out desperate distress signals using the new wireless radio system. Nearby ships got the messages, but the closest one, the Californian, never came. Its radio operator had already gone to bed. The Carpathia, which was much farther away, immediately raced toward the Titanic, but it was still more than 3 hours away. The Titanic didn't have that kind of time. Around 2:20 in the morning on April 15th, just 2 hours and 40 minutes after hitting the iceberg, the Titanic finally gave out. The front of the ship was completely underwater. The huge stress caused the ship to split into 2 pieces. The bow went under first. The stern briefly rose almost straight into the air. Then it, too, slipped beneath the Atlantic. More than 1,500 people died that night. Most didn't die from drowning. The water was around -2 degrees Celsius, or 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold shock and hypothermia killed people within minutes. It remains one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in history. So, it wasn't just iceberg. There were several mistakes that occurred. That downfall of the largest ship in the world, overconfidence, ignoring repeated ice warnings, going too fast, a moonless, calm night, no binoculars, weak rivets and damaged hull plates, watertight compartments that weren't tall enough, too few lifeboats, and outdated safety rules. If even one or two of those things had gone differently, history might have turned out another way. The tragedy changed maritime safety forever. Ships had to carry enough lifeboats for everyone. Continuous radio watches became required. International iceberg patrols were created to keep an eye on dangerous waters. In a lot of ways, the lives lost on the Titanic led to safer oceans for generations after. More than a century later, the Titanic still grabs our attention, not because it was unsinkable, but because it reminds us that even humanity's biggest achievements can be undone by overconfidence and a chain of small mistakes. And honestly, that's probably the biggest lesson the Titanic left behind. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe for more facts that no one ever knew.